Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm going to do a very detailed walkthrough of Ridgewalk by Aqeel Aadam. This is available for iOS as an AUv3 on iPad and iPhone, and on desktop as Clap, VST3 or audio unit. The iOS version is only $10, which I think is a really good deal. The desktop version is currently on an intro price of $35, full price is $50. I find $50 a bit expensive for this, I must say, but it is very nice. Also, the iOS version on the App Store, there's now a bundle, so you can get this and Aqeel's other plugin called Weeping Wall, which is a similar effect, but it is a bit different. You can get the two of those for $15, so that's a really good deal, I think. So,
what you do to me, what you
So we can do some really nice stuff with this. I love these kind of micro loopers. So what I'm going to do first here is take this out and add in a new one.
Oh,
Now,
what you do to me.
let me give you a bit of advice. When you're loading this for the first time, don't have any input audio playing when you load it. And the reason is that it comes with certain default settings. And in the buffer section here, now I'll explain in a second all about buffer, looper, and so on. In the buffer section, it is set to a synced time of 2 bars, and it's set to auto recording. Again, I'll talk about that in a second. But the practical aspect is, let me show you what happens if we bring it in when there's already audio playing there.
What you do.
When the audio is playing, you're not able to change the time of the buffer.
What you do to me.
Right, so that is, you see, this cannot be changed after a recording is made. Now, we can clear the buffer though by pressing X for 1 second, and then this will become available to change. So now you can, well, let's talk briefly about the general concept of the app. I'll just mention also, by the way, I did an early walkthrough, 25 minutes long, on my Patreon for my patrons last night. I've also got a giveaway for people on Patreon to win iOS and a desktop if they want, depending on what tier they're on, copies of this. So Patreon, a great way to support my channel, and you get great stuff in return. Thanks a lot to everyone who's supporting me there. So,
what you do to me.
Basic concept here. Bring this down a little bit. So here what we're seeing is a buffer that has been recorded. So here in this particular setup, audio is being recorded every time it passes over this threshold. And it's recording 2 bars of audio. So there's a bit of a silent part here near the end because this sample is only about 5 beats long. Now we have various recording modes, and we can do various things related to the way the loops play the recorded audio back and like how they move around that buffer the recorded audio. I'm going to bring the dry down there, and I'll bring the wet down quite low as well. I'm just going to put on this blur. That's really nice, adding a kind of reverb effect. So let me explain the basic concept of the plugin. So you're sending audio into the plugin. You record that audio. The plugin can have a certain memory, so it can hold more than one buffer, one piece of recorded audio in its memory, and you can switch between those using this layers button. By default, it's set to only record 5 layers, but you can record up to 9, I think, if you want. That's in settings here. Another thing that's in settings, by the way, on the second page is ability to turn off tooltips. So you might want to do that once you've got familiar with the app. I'm just going to leave them on for now. I might need 1 or 2 from time to time, but I do understand this app pretty well by now. I'll just mention, by the way, there is no good written manual for this app, and I do think it needs one, and it should have one. There is information on the Dev's Gumroad page. That's where you buy the desktop version, by the way, and on the App Store, but it's just not organized very well. Some information is missing there. You know, there's some stuff that's in the tool tips here that's not in the manual, and so on. It could really use a good written manual. So anyway, we record these buffers in, and then the loopers can play this audio back. Let me bring down blur there. So let me bring down the number of loopers. So now we just got one loop, and it's playing for 4 seconds. And if we go to traversal, it's in theory moving forwards, but we're not really seeing any moving forward. Why? Because the buffer is not long enough. The buffer and the loop are the same size, basically, or more or less the same size. So the loop doesn't have room to roam. So if we bring the looper size down, now what you're seeing is loops being played back, and they're playing back from various points in the buffer. So you see here also the waveform is changing from time to time. Remember, that's because it's every time this goes over the threshold, it's recording a new buffer. And so by default, it will just play the last recorded buffer. So what we're seeing here is that waveform for that audio that's been recorded in. And what we're seeing here is this represents the playback. So we can, you know, like change the speed that moves around and change its direction and so on. So like here, it's moving through very slowly. And like this, it's moving through much faster, so that's a bit more glitchy and random. Okay, so a buffer of recorded audio and then loopers that play back and loop little fragments. These fragments can be very small, or they can be bigger, more like chunks. And we can pitch those up to 2 octaves up and up to 2 octaves down. One thing that I think is a pity is that, like, really, the way that a control like this should work, in my opinion, because you might want to use it in live performance. Like, let's say you're in live performance and you want to go directly from, say, 0 pitch increase to, let's say, up 3 semitones. In the current setup, you've got to drag between intermediate pitches. So, you know, you want to go up, say, up 7 semitones, then you know, you got to drag through all these intermediate ones. So the way it should work, in my opinion, is you press and you move to a value you want, and then only when you release your finger does it change. Anyway, that's the way it is at the moment. Let's see if that gets added. So blur, this will crossfade between loops. So here we've only got one loop, but it is moving around, and it's it's crossfading between them as between it as it moves around. This is what it's like with 7 loopers playing back. So again, up at a high value, there's a lot of reverb in there. This this drift part. This will add a bit of randomness to looper size and position. Random skip. If we put that all the way up, there will be no more wet signal at all, because we'll have 100% silence. At this setting, we've got about 50% silence. So this is a nice way to make things more glitchy. And here we've got no silence. I'll just mention that this can do reverse playback. And if you press that while you're recording, it can also record reversed audio. This again is to clear the buffer. Gotta hold it for a second. Now, if I'm in auto recording mode and I don't want any more new buffers to be recorded, then I just increase the threshold. And now it will just keep playing that last buffer. So you see, this waveform is no longer changing. If I bring threshold down to a suitably low level, you can see there, that's it recording in the new buffer. I put threshold up, so it's no longer recording any new layers, and then I can move between the previous recorded layers. Let's go over to this one for a minute. So buffer, we also have this classic recording and file import sections, or settings. So classic recording, that will bring up a little button like this, and let's just clear this. Okay, so now I'm going to record, let's say, just 2 beats. And you see here, look, this changes the units of time for the buffer. Size sets the length of the buffer in seconds. Sync size sets the length in tempo sync musical instruments. Neither of these can be changed after a recording is made. Do not forget that. So let's bring that in. So I'm pressing record. And if I keep that held down, it will start overdubbing, because remember, it's each buffer is only going to be 2 beats long. So that's why here now you're seeing the waveform representing the buffer being overwritten again and again, or overdubbed. And we can use the sidechain thing here. Newly recorded audio will overlay and compress any existing audio. The compressor ratios range from 1 to 1 to 1 to 10. So let me pause the host, let me clear this buffer, and let's put this up to a 1 bar loop, and let's just change to auto recording. So look, we also have a file import option. I'm not going to demo it, but I have tested it and it works fine. You basically press file import, it'll open up the files app, and you can choose an audio recording to just load in here, right? So you can just load samples. You don't have to record into it if you don't want to. So put it back to auto recording. Nice. Let's play with the feedback. Bring it down. So let's play around a little bit with the settings just to hear what kind of sounds we can get. So I'm going to put the loop length up a little bit. Let's try a synced one. That's pretty nice. So that's with just one loop. That's 7. Bring the feedback down. Let's just put it up. Default 50%. Now, there is something in settings on the second page. So here, okay, look, maximum number of layers stored. Okay, maximum is 10, yeah. So pitch quantization, if we turn this on, we have a choice, octaves or octaves and fifths. So you see now we don't have all those intermediate pitches. So, you know, I mean, this is useful for performance, but I still do think that it should have value changes. At least there should be an option for value changes when you lift your finger or, you know, de-click, stop clicking or whatever, take your finger off the mouse. Anyway, it's not a big deal. Beautiful. So I'll bring the size of this down. Drift. So you see now the loops are able to move around. Drift adds randomness to looper size and position. I mean, it can be nice to reduce the wet level, and especially if you bring in the blur, it can just be like a nice little kind of reverby thing with a bit of texture. Pitch it and then you got a shimmer reverb basically. Excuse me. So traversal, we have this fade time. Excuse me. Let me put it up a little bit. I'm going to put the wet volume up. And now I'm going to press pause. So it should now take about 7 seconds, yes, to fade out. Let me press play again. And now I've turned fade time down to 0. And I pressed pause. But it's still going on for quite a long time there. Fade time is how long playback will fade in and out for when starting playback or pausing. I don't know why it's still going there. Could be human error. If you know why it's happening, let me know in the comments. So spread adjusts the relative distance between active loopers. So let's see, there we have 2 loops, and spread is at 100. Let's increase the start and end position there. Yeah. So let me bring spread down. That's one I'd really like a little bit more clarity on, because I'm not really seeing that in the UI. Oh, and there we go. There is a crash, ladies and gentlemen. So this is still a bit unstable, unfortunately. I hope things get fixed. I do really like this. So we're nearly near the end of the video, everybody. If you found it useful, please smash the like, write a comment and all that good stuff. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. So start and end position, I really like to first put them to the same. Like here I've put it to 100, and then pull down end position, and it'll go all the way down to the bottom. And now if I take start position and I increase that, you see now how it's moving up the buffer. So let's hear that on this audio. It'll be very clear.
What you do to me.
That can be really cool to play with.
Oh, what you do to me. Oh,
so fully wet here. Now let me just check all the settings here. Take a drift down. And I'm gonna bring the loop size down. And now bringing that start position up. And so you see now we're looping really small fragments in very specific parts of the buffer. We've got a lot of control over things. Now let me change it so that start and end position is opened up so we can traverse the entire buffer. But again, now it's going into the silent part. And you might want that or might not, so I don't want that right now, so I'm going to bring end position down a bit. So we can see here exactly where it's ending now. Let me bring that up. That's pretty much now we're going to traverse the entire section of the audio. So you can see at the moment it's moving forwards. So I'm trying to see what's causing those loops. There were a couple of loops we were seeing there. And now it's looking pretty much like... Oh, there we go, yeah. Oh, no, that's just it going back to the start, yeah. Let's just have one loop. And here it's going to move forward very slowly. It's going to take 32 bars. So we could also have unsync times 60 seconds. What you do to me? What you do to me? What you do to me? So here, look, they're jumping through very quickly. I don't really understand why there are two peaks here when I've just got one looper. So, you know, this is why I'd really like a manual kind of explaining these things very systematically and in more detail. So then we have this one, Wander. Uses Brownian motion to randomly move forward and backwards. Backwards. Less quickly. I feel like 1, 2, 3, yeah? Ping pong. Speed it up. Tap. So here we tap and it will loop that particular point in the buffer. Now again, remember that we can increase the size of the loop and we can add in more loops. There's 4. Increase the blur if we want, and so on. Let me bring it back down to just one loop. And now I'll show you how to use the external setting. So let me load an LFO. So of course, how you do this exactly will depend on your host. So this here LFO is sending out on CC1, CC46. I love this LFO. I've got a video on this on my Patreon, by the way. One of my many and growing collection of exclusive videos on Patreon. Damn. Okay. External motion. So we'll set this to CC1, sorry, channel 1, CC46. Oh, and I need to tell it that I'm sending in MIDI control from there. So now, this LFO is controlling that. Bring the loop size down a little bit. Let's try the square. So that's just going between those beginning and end sections, and that's not that interesting for this one. Sample and hold. Okay, so that's how, at least in AUM, the host I'm using, that's how this works. So really enjoying this. I do hope that whatever's causing those crashes gets fixed. Was really pretty surprised earlier to see it crashing AUM entirely. That almost never happens. But beautiful sound, really creative, really enjoyable. Love this kind of thing. And yeah, it's great to have more apps like this on iOS, because this is a bit of a gap. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.